The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. $1.87. That was all she had saved. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. Oh, there was so clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and cry. So Della did. You see, life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, but mainly of sniffles. Della finished her cry and stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking along a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she only had $1.87 with which to buy Jim, her husband, a present. Oh, she had been saving all she could for months with this result. $20 a week. That was their total income. It doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Oh, many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him, something rare and fine, something good enough to be owned by Jim. Suddenly, she whirled from the window and stood before the mirror between the windows of the room. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to full length. Now, there were 2 possessions of the James Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. Nervously and quickly she did it up again. Once she hesitated for a minute and stood still while a tear or two ran down her cheeks. On went her old brown jacket, went on her old brown hat. With the brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she ran out the door and down the stairs to the street. She stopped at a sign where the shop sign read, Madame Sofroni, hair goods of all kinds. 1 flight up, Della ran and collected herself, panting. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off. Let's have a look at it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the hair with a skillful hand. Give it to me, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. She was looking in the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. It was a gold chain, simple and chaste in design, like all good things. It was worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew it must be Jim's. It was like him. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes was ashamed of the old leather strap that he used in place of a chain. When Della got home, her excitement gave way to reason. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and began to work on her hair. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls. that made her look like a schoolboy. At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made, and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the supper. Della held the chain in the palm of her hand and sat on the corner of the table near to the door that he always entered. Then she heard his foot on the stairs, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit for saying a little prayer about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him still think I am still pretty." The door opened, and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22, and to be a burden with the family, he needed a new overcoat, and he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door. Then he stood still. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, no surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her, fixedly, with that peculiar expression on his face. Della left the table and went for him. "Jim, darling," she cried, "don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you." "You've cut off your hair?" asked Jim, laboriously, as if he did not understand what Della had said. "Cut it off and sold it," said Della. "Don't you like me just as well anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I?" Jim looked about the room curiously. You say your hair is gone," he said, almost like an idiot. "You needn't look for it," said Della. "It's sold, I tell you. Sold and gone too. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you." Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He embraced his Della. For 10 seconds, nothing seemed to matter. Then he drew a package from his overcoat and threw it upon the table. "Don't make any mistake about me, Della," he said. "I don't think there's anything about your haircut that could make me love you any less. But if you'll unwrap that package, you may see why I didn't know what to say for a while at first." Her white fingers tore at the string and paper nimbly, and then a scream of joy, and then such a quick feminine change to hysterical tears and wails. For there lay the combs, the set of combs that Della had worshipped long in a shop window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoiseshell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in her beautiful hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved for them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers, but the hair that should have adorned the combs was gone. But she hugged them to her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Della leapt up and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not seen yet his beautiful present. She held it out for him eagerly upon her open palm. "Isn't it lovely, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. Della, he said, let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them for a while. They're too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now, suppose you get the supper ready. The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderful wise men who brought gifts to baby Jesus in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones. And here I have told you the story of two foolish children who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But let me tell you that of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. For all who give and receive gifts, they are the Magi.